Hi, everyone. So I've got a picture of a chimpanzee smoking a cigarette up there, I think. And it's a symbol of an idea I think we can all accept, that tools change the way in which we behave. And in fact, when a new tool arrives and it proves its value, the adoption of it can sometimes be exponential. Some of the older members of the audience might remember a time when the mobile phone first arrived. And it very quickly moved from being a yuppie affectation to being something that is completely ubiquitous that even your granny would have in her handbag. So tools are changing the way in which we behave, and they change the way in which we work. And today I really want to talk about a subset of the population, which is the people that actually make these tools. I'm talking about software engineers, machine learning experts, web app developers, data scientists, the people who are really making the technologies that are going to change the way in which we behave, both personally and professionally. And I'm going to suggest to you two assertions as recruiters that we should be interested in. Number one, that the people who are creating the tools that change the way in which we work have changed further. In other words, I believe that they have and are developing a very new understanding of what work really is. And that understanding is actually very different from how most corporate businesses think work should be. The second point I would assert is that the recruiting structures that we have developed really are not compatible with the way in which these new people think about what work is. And those are the two main points, I believe, which makes it particularly difficult to recruit these people into our businesses. So, as Stephen mentioned, over the last 3 years, I've been working on a business called Workshape. It's a recruiting platform for companies recruiting tool makers. And amongst sort of all of the innovations that we've put in, probably the most significant one is that we base our product on what the developer is looking for. That's the primary driver behind what Workshape is. We want to get it away from being a recruitment optimized product to being a product optimized for the software engineer. What do you want? What do you want from companies? What is the style of work that you're looking for? And in fact, how do you want to interact with these companies? And we've got, 30,000 people on there. We've got hundreds of companies, so we've tracked thousands of interactions between software people and companies recruiting software engineers. And some very clear patterns come out from some of the questions we're asking both parties, which I think are very relevant for us to think about. So, these are the various dichotomies that we can expose when both software people and companies enter our platform. We basically ask them what it is that they're looking for, what style of work that is most interesting to them. And of course, on the other side, we ask companies what kind of people they want and what style of work they want to be done. And there's kind of no guessing, really. It's not difficult to guess which column belongs to the employer and which column belongs to the tech people. Permanent versus project, companies default to hiring permanent. Of course, that's the objective. We hire only contract because we have to. Well, guess what? Whenever you give a developer an opportunity, they're more interested in problem projects. How do we solve this problem? The concept of permanently being attached to a company is not necessarily as attractive as it once was. On-site versus remote. Of course, companies think about hiring someone, they're going to be in the building, at desk. Well, these are the people that have built the internet. They've built distributed platforms. They've built the communication tools, which reduces the value of proximity, at least the value of physical proximity. Full-time versus flexi-time. Full-time, you know what, I don't even think we know what we mean when we say full-time. Do we mean, 40 hours, 35, 50? What does it actually mean? And does it really map to the value that this person is going to give us if we hire that person permanently? Again, a technical person is much more used to working attached to problems, solving the problem, and that naturally becomes a lot more flexible. Exclusive versus polyfolio. Polyfolio, I think I might have invented that word today, so forgive me if you're not familiar with it. Exclusive. When we hire someone, we often don't think about what we're doing, that we're making an exclusionary act. But of course, when we do hire someone permanently, we don't assume they're going to be working for anybody else. And in fact, there's often a clause buried away in your contract that will tell you, actually, you're not allowed to work for anybody else. It's an exclusive deal. You hire someone not only for them to work for you, but to make sure they cannot work for someone else. Well, software engineers, technical people are very used to having multiple strands of revenue. Poly from polyamorous, meaning, very promiscuous in terms of the people who they do business with. And folio from portfolio, meaning they've got multiple sources of companies or businesses that they can provide value to. So whenever we ask developers when they come into the platform which they choose, they almost all choose things on the left. Whenever companies come on board, in terms of, we ask them what they're looking to hire ideally, they all decide to choose on the right. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we may have two problems. We may actually be creating jobs that the technical people really don't want to do. The job content, the style of work, the delivery of that work may not be something that they're particularly motivated or interested by. And secondly, the way in which we recruit people, permanent, on-site, full-time, creates a set of problems for us that I think increase the issues of hiring the technical folks that we need for our companies. So we often think that this is an employer branding problem. We're not attractive enough as an employer. We need to stick tens of thousands to make our brand better, polish up our logos, do whatever. We often think it's a sourcing problem. We need to stick more training to our recruitment team. We need to buy more tooling. We need to do those types of activities. Or we think it's an assessment problem, or our hiring managers can't interview properly, or those types of issues. I think it's much more likely that we have failed to understand where technology has driven technology workers. And they have a very different idea as to what it is that they want. Does anyone recognize this thing here? You probably don't need to read the text for you to recognize that it's a hiring funnel, classic recruitment hiring funnel, taken from marketing, I believe. But the concept's very similar. You kind of stuff things at the top, as many as you can, and then you go through a filtration period all the way through to the very bottom where you have your candidate that you want to offer and hire. Now, I think the candidate funnel, or the recruitment funnel, is very useful when you're recruiting for someone who's permanent, full-time, and on-site for you. It probably is still a suitable conceptual model to recruit when you are hiring that person. And I would say, you know what, for maybe a graduate recruitment program, or for types of roles that you have in your business that perhaps there's a lot of labor and you need to kind of control the flow and what have you, this model may actually be suitable. But I put it to you, it probably isn't a suitable model when you're thinking about hiring in-demand people that have a different idea of what work really is. So a big part of the problem we have is that when we're making a permanent hire, it's actually a really high commitment. Yeah? When you think about it, I think Glassdoor came out with a study a couple of months ago, and they quantified how much it cost to make a bad hire. And I think they said it was something like $50,000 or something like that, which I thought was actually an underestimation. Because you think about the problems of time that you've put in, you think about the tools that you've used, you think about the morale that you've damaged by bringing in a bad hire, the cost of it is actually much more significant than that. So hiring someone is high risk, it's high commitment. Therefore, we put risk mitigation strategies to make sure that we've got it right, to avoid the idea of a bad hire. This is the CV screen, the psychometric test, technical interview, whiteboarding, reference checking. Even at the back end, we're still not sure. Yeah? We're doing all this because we're trying to really create confidence that can't be there. We're trying to do it because we want to A, hire the right person, but be desperately sure not to hire the wrong person. Now, think about what that means to the candidate experience. Think about what this funnel means to someone that has to go through it. We've all been job seekers before, I dare say, apart from maybe some of the very younger ones in the audience here. And I put it to you that none of us truly enjoyed going through this type of experience. Yeah? Filling out an application form and being assessed on that, taking a telephone interview and being assessed by that, going to a face-to-face interview, and again, being assessed by that. When you think about what assessment is, it's judgment. It's somebody judging someone else. And it's impossible to judge someone and make that person feel good. So, how do we get to the point where we can actually recruit the people we want without creating this horrendous experience and making it kind of a little bit more humane? Question that often comes up in startup is this. What would you do if you had a blank slate and you could do it all over again? Forget about the legacy, forget about the training, forget about all of the things that companies have told you that you should do. What would you do if you could do it perfectly from scratch? Think about the people we're looking to recruit. They're looking for projects, problems. Well, why don't we give them a project or problem to work on? There's no need to get this person into a funnel. They're already used to working on projects for companies that don't employ them. Think about the on-site and distributed angle. They're already working from home or from another site. You don't need to create the conditions for this person to come into your office. You can very easily deploy a project for them to work on remotely. Think about the portfolio angle. Why not be one of the companies that provides them with a revenue stream? It's a way in which you could test whether this person is a suitable individual for your company without forcing them through an inhumane recruitment process. So you might think this is all crazy talk. But there are companies that are already doing this, that are completely rethinking how you mentally approach the idea of recruiting. There's a company called Buffer. Does anybody in the audience know Buffer by any chance? A few people? Very simple product. Basically, social scheduling tool. So if you like to do Twitter or whatever and you can't stay on it 24/7 like Donald Trump might, you can schedule it in advance. So you send these tweets out. Well, actually, it's not a very interesting product, but they are a very interesting company in terms of how they recruit. They don't recruit anybody permanently, ever. Not until they've done 2 short-term contracts. That's default for them. They understand that they can't get any value from forcing someone through a recruitment process. No value in a technical interview. No value giving them a technical test. Give them a project to do. Pay them to do it. You will learn whether that person is a cultural fit. You'll learn whether that person can communicate with you. You'll also learn whether that person delivers value because he's actually working on a live project that you've given him. Another example. Automatic, spelled with double T. A lot of people might not have heard of Automatic. It's a software company. But you might have heard of WordPress, which is a content management system. I think half the internet's built from it. Well, Automatic build WordPress. They have core members to this day that have never met each other. Never physically met. Because some of them are on the East Coast, some of them on the West Coast. They've been going for something like 10 years or so, and they've built half the internet. And this is a company where core members of the team have actually never shook hands. Perfectly possible to build and develop a business without having this physical proximity. And lastly, and really my company doesn't really belong with those, but I want to cite it as an example because when I started WorkShape, I really wanted to live the values of this new way of working. And we've been going 3 years or so. We've got a small team of 6 people across 5 continents, I think. 4 of whom we've never met. 2 of whom I don't think I've even had a video call with. But I do know that they provide exceptional value to us because they accept the work. We understand how to operate in a distributed way. And we have a very transparent and flat way of working that is aligned to how their way of working is. So I'll leave you with the final few points because a lot of this will be difficult to chew over and difficult to implement. But I would say this, give it a shot. There may be 1 or 2 roles within your company that you've struggled to fill, very hard for whatever reason. You know what? It doesn't work. Why? Probably because the people who you're talking to have a different idea of the work compared to how you think about work. And almost definitely because you're asking them to do something that they're very reluctant to do, get into that recruitment funnel. Give them a project, give it a shot, and see what happens. And I promise you, you'll have a more humane experience doing it that way than you would do trying to force people through something that they don't want to do. Anyway, that's me. I'm Hung Lee. Thank you very much.